Chapter 1. The New Transfer. Rain slicked the pavement outside Chong Academy, a sprawling institution nestled on the outskirts of the Cascadia Arcology. The school had once been a symbol of elite education, an institution that forged future leaders, thinkers, and tacticians. Now, its concrete towers loomed under gray skies like relics of a world that had forgotten how to hope. Inside, the corridors were alive with noise, footsteps, lockers slamming, fragments of gossip, and synthetic laughter. But when Principal Eames stepped onto the intercom, the clamor faded to a murmur. Attention students and faculty. We have a new transfer joining Class 9A today. Please extend your usual hospitality. A few students exchanged curious glances. Transfers were rare these days, especially in the senior classes. Resources were scarce. Movement between arcologies even more so. In room 407, homeroom teacher Ms. Reese barely looked up from her tablet when the door slid open. "This is Chong. Take a seat at the back." The figure stepped into the room, tall, composed, strangely still. Their black uniform was regulation, but the fabric clung to their frame like it had grown there. Pale silver eyes scanned the room, emotionless. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Chong didn't speak, didn't blink, just walked with a mechanical grace to the empty desk near the window and sat. Outside, the rain intensified. Nathan Vale, who sat 2 seats over, leaned toward his best friend Savi and whispered, "Another clone, maybe?" Savi shrugged, her eyes fixed on Chong. "Something's off. Look at the hands. Too still. And the way they breathe, it's like they're pretending to be human," Nathan finished. Ms. Reese tapped her tablet. "All right. Today we're continuing our study on pre-collapse civilizations. Page 91. Eyes front." But no one was really focused on ancient Earth empires. All eyes kept drifting back to the silent figure at the rear. Chong never took notes. Never looked up. Just sat perfectly still, like they were waiting for something. No one yet knew that Chong was not born on Earth. And Earth, as it had existed for millennia, had only weeks left. Chapter 2. Drex Barn. The twin sons of Corellis, two cast long shadows across the red-banded cliffs of the Serpent Wastes. Wind howled through the jagged rocks like a wounded beast, scattering ash and sand into the air. A lone figure trudged across the broken land, wrapped in a tattered cloak stained with the dust of war. His name was Drex Barn. Once a commander in the Hellion Armada, Drex had led fleets across the stars. He was known as the Flame of the Void, a ruthless tactician, feared and respected by both allies and enemies. But that was before the Chong descended, before his homeworld burned, before he lost everything. He stopped at the edge of a collapsed ridge, his cybernetic eyes scanning the horizon. The Chong relay tower loomed in the distance, an obsidian spire humming with energy, surrounded by patrol drones. Beneath his cloak, Drex gripped the hilt of his plasma saber, feeling the familiar surge of heat in its core. That tower was his target. Behind him, a low chirp echoed from his SATCOM. He tapped the device, and a fuzzy voice crackled through. "Drex, you still alive out there?" It was Kara Miles, the Resistance's intelligence chief. "Barely," Drex muttered, watching a Chong patrol skimmer drift past the tower. "I see the relay. Heavily guarded. Looks like they've reinforced since your last scan." "You sure you want to do this alone?" Kara asked. "We could drop a team in." "No time," he cut her off. "If they bring that relay online, they'll triangulate every rebel transmission on the planet. You won't get a second chance." There was a pause. Then Kara's voice softened. "All right. Just don't make this another suicide run. We need you, Drex." He didn't answer. He closed the SATCOM and descended into the valley, his silhouette vanishing into the crimson mist. The tower's base was a tangle of alien alloy and bioorganic tech. Chong guards patrolled in perfect, insectoid coordination, their eyes glowing with an eerie teal light. Drex crept through the ruins of an old Hellion outpost, now overtaken by Chong growths. Vines pulsed with bioluminescent fluid, crawling like veins through shattered stone. He planted charges beneath the eastern support, timing them with precision. Then he climbed, using the spine-like ridges of the tower's surface as handholds. Halfway up, a Chong drone spotted him. It screeched, alerting the others. Drex cursed and launched himself upward. Energy blasts scorched the air behind him. He reached a maintenance hatch, ripped it open, and rolled inside just as the outer wall exploded. The interior was worse than he expected, humid, organic, alive. The walls pulsed like muscle, and the floor squelched underfoot. He made his way to the core, navigating through a maze of fleshy corridors and flickering hollow nodes. At the heart of the relay, he saw it, a neural nexus, humming with Chong intelligence. It was more than just a transmitter, it was a mind. Drex pulled the core detonator from his belt. "No mercy," he whispered. As he activated the device, the relay's mind surged. The chamber screamed with a psychic pulse, forcing Drex to his knees. Images flooded his brain, visions of the Chang's home galaxy, their ancient war, and something else. A presence. Watching. He forced his arm up and slammed the detonator into the core. Burn in the void. The world erupted in white fire. Later, in the wreckage, Kara's rescue skimmer descended. They found Drex half buried in rubble, his armor scorched, his cybernetics fried, but alive. When he opened his eye, he didn't speak. He just stared into the sky, as if remembering what he saw in that final moment. Something vast, something terrible, something coming. Chapter 3. The Shove. The morning after the pulse was deceptively calm. No alarms. No sirens. Just the thick silence that comes when a city's heart forgets how to beat. Chong stood on the rooftop of what used to be a hospital, now little more than a hollow shell. The wind tugged at his jacket, and for a moment, he let it. Below, the streets were ghosted with ash and motionless vehicles, silent witnesses to the night the sky cracked open. Behind him, the resistance cell stirred. Quinn was fitting a new power cell into the drone, muttering about fried circuits and alien-coded dampening fields. Rhesus scanned frequencies, looking for any trace of movement from the invaders, or worse, collaborators. Chong wasn't interested in any of that. Not now. He had seen it. In the flash of that blinding light, he had felt it. A hand on his shoulder snapped him back. "You okay?" Rhesus's voice was softer than usual, like she was talking to a wounded animal. "I saw one," he replied. "Up close." Her eyes hardened. "Did it see you?" Chong hesitated. "I think it wanted me to." That wasn't the scary part. The scary part was how human it had looked, right before it vanished. Later that day, they reached what was left of the transport corridor along 7th Avenue. The plan was to scavenge what they could from the wrecked magrail, but the corridor was already crawling with scav squads, some human, others not quite. That's when it happened. The confrontation was stupid. A kid, barely old enough to shave, stood between Chong and a working power coil. The boy's eyes were wild, half-starved, and gripped tight to a makeshift spear like it was salvation. "We need it more," Rhesus said evenly. "No," the kid snarled. "I found it. You back off." There was no time to argue. Chong stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Look, The boy lunged. It wasn't fast. It wasn't trained. Chong didn't think. He shoved. The kid stumbled backward and fell, right over the edge of the broken platform. The impact echoed up through the concrete like a gunshot. No one said anything for a long moment. Quinn finally broke the silence. "He would have killed you." "Doesn't make it better," Chong muttered. He didn't sleep that night. In his dreams, the boy's face changed, morphed, until it wore the same half-familiar features as the creature he saw in the light. And when Chong woke, gasping in the dark, the first thing he noticed wasn't the sweat, or the cold, or the pressure in his chest. It was that something had left a mark on his shoulder, right where the creature had touched him. And it was glowing. Chapter 4. Hybrid Truth. The mark didn't fade. By morning, it had deepened in color, faintly blue, pulsing like a second heartbeat beneath his skin. Chong kept it hidden beneath layers of clothing, even as his body began to feel off. Stronger in some ways, numb in others. He hadn't told the others yet. Not even Risa. Especially not Risa. Trust was rare these days and fragile.
Like glass.
They moved underground that morning, slipping through the maintenance tunnels beneath the old rail yards. Rumors said the invaders weren't scanning subterranean sectors, at least not yet. But Chang had the creeping sense that something was following them. Not from outside. From inside. "You're lagging," Quinn said, offering him a canteen. Chang nodded. "Didn't sleep." "No kidding," Quinn muttered, glancing at him. "You look like a corpse that started glowing." Chang didn't answer. Instead, he turned away and stared into the black void of the tunnel ahead. That night, after setting camp in a collapsed loading bay, Risa cornered him. "What's wrong with you?" He considered lying. Instead, he pulled back his collar. The light from the fire caught the glowing mark, now branching, thin veins of blue stretching across his shoulder blade. Risa stared, eyes wide. "They touched you, didn't they?" Chang nodded slowly. She exhaled, backing away like he was radioactive. "You should have said something. You could be infected. Or worse, linked." "Linked?" he asked, voice low. "We've heard whispers," she said, "about people marked by them. Some go mad. Others disappear. And a few change." "Into what?" She hesitated. "Hybrids." Silence settled between them like ash. Until Chang broke it. "I don't feel crazy. I don't feel like them." "No," she said. "But you're not fully you anymore either." That hit harder than he expected. Later, when everyone else was asleep, Chang sat alone and listened. Not with his ears, but with something else. Something new. And then he heard it. A voice not quite human, not quite alien. Whispering in a language he didn't understand, yet somehow knew. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a call. And part of him wanted to answer.